Folks, I am very happy to welcome to As the World Churns, Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib, who is the director of Realign for Palestine and a resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Ahmed, I want to give you the opportunity to talk to us about what a Realign for Palestine is working on right now at a time when it is clear, at least to me, that the crimes that are being committed by Israel are just being shrugged off. Like I don't know what else to say it. I don't know how we, and I talk about this often as human beings, see real-time photos and videos coming out of Gaza and just kind of move along with life as it is and just make excuses around politics and, oh, if you bring it up and you're not an expert in that area, then you need to understand geopolitics to really understand what's happening. I don't think that that's the case. I think that you have to understand human beings in order to understand what is happening and what we are allowing to happen as a world. So talk to us about Realign for Palestine. Talk to us about what we need to know about what is currently happening right now in Gaza.
Certainly. Well, thanks so much for having me. Realign for Palestine is bringing multiple threads of my lived experience, some of the realities on the ground in Gaza, some of the dis- disconnect I think between the communities in Gaza and those in the diaspora. Realign for Palestine is wanting to hold multiple truths for how to advocate for the just and urgent aspirations of the Palestinian people, such that there's a rejection of violence, an acknowledgement that Hamas is, in fact, a nefarious player and a nefarious contributor to the suffering of the Palestinian people, while also clearly calling out the horrendous atrocities that are taking place in Gaza on a regular basis, of which I unfortunately I've experienced personally with the loss of 33 of my immediate and extended family. I was able to get some of my family members out. My brother, Muhammad, and his wife and four kids were in our family home where I grew up, and where they lived when it was hit and it was bombed, and they pushed their way out of the rubble. And then he saved some of the. It was a family, a four-story family building, and he saved the rest of my family members. But some people choose to direct their anger and frustration in one direction, which is to consistently yell and scream about the fact that the United States is supporting the Israeli government. The United States is a direct and an indirect participant in what's happening and what's unfolding. For me personally, and that of many Palestinians on the ground in Gaza and even here, we feel that there is a missing component of this, which is Hamas and calling out the terrible players within our community who have served our people on a silver platter to the most far right and fascistic government in Israel's history.
Yeah. First, my deepest condolences to the extreme loss that you have experienced and that your family has experienced during this time. I think that too often, again, we're very much stuck on statistics. We're very much stuck on numbers and not on actual real human cost and the cost of life that is happening, and also to that extent the displacement that is happening. And, when we opened up and you're talking about not just what is happening in Gaza prominently right now, but also what is happening throughout the diaspora and what is happening to people, whether they're in the United States or not, that are trying to speak out, that are being held as criminals, that are being labeled as terrorists. And so I wonder when you were talking about like purposeful realignment, right? And realigning around nonviolence and realigning around, condemnation for certain governments and spaces that are preying on people, right? That's to me what the far right has been. They are preying on people. They're preying on their lack of knowledge to make justification for extreme violence. right? And threatening people that if you align with humanitarian causes and spaces, then you must be anti-Semitic. You must
Mhm,
be
mhm.
X, Y, and Z. And so, do you, Ahmed, do you see an ability to decouple those things, like
Prec
at all?
Precisely, precisely. But that's the essence of what Realign for Palestine believe I mean, is trying to achieve. It's more than just an organization. It's more than just an effort. It's really a framework. It's an attempt to reimagine the nature of this discourse and how we approach pro-Palestine advocacy, and advocacy is somewhere in between. There's activism, there's advocacy, and then there is policy. Advocacy exists between the activism and policy realms and is concerned about how you present, how you connect with different audiences, with responsible custodianship of the cause that you're entrusted with. The people of Gaza don't really have a voice. They don't have the ability to get their message to a powerful audience like that in the United States and in the Western world. And so for me, I am frustrated at times by what I feel are ineffective forms of advocacy and activism that squander a once in a lifetime opportunity to drum up support for the Palestinian people, to build alliances across a large tent beyond just leftist and liberal and democratic audiences. Because let's face it, a lot of those constituencies don't really hold real power that can effectuate the realities of Palestinians on the ground. I want to save lives. I believe in radical pragmatism, which is understanding the limits of where we're at. And I'm sorry, I systemic change sounds wonderful, but we're talking about my surviving family members. We're talking about daily horrendous scenes of maiming and killing and the annihilation of an entire people. We're talking about the risk of permanent expulsion and ethnic cleansing. And I am desperate to stop that. There's those who believe that there's a long-term struggle for
Mhm,
Palestinian
mhm,
liberation, and
mhm,
there might be space for those conversations, but right now the priority is we do have an exclusionary Islamist terrorist organization that is masquerading as a freedom fighting resistance effort, but they are not. Hamas's worst victims in the 1980s were Palestinian women that they were throwing acid in their face so that they dress up modestly, and Palestinian men that they suspected of collaborating with Israelis and arbitrarily executed them. Hamas served our people on a silver platter to an extreme government, knowing that our people don't have resources, our people are defenseless, our people are vulnerable. And I believe strongly that that is entirely irresponsible, criminal. Plus, there's something else that I want to highlight there. What happened on October 7th was truly criminal. Elements of that were entirely vile, inconsistent with Palestinian and Muslim values. And I think calling that out, this is what I want to normalize
mhm,
and realign.
mhm,
The realignment is to hold multiple truths, to
mhm,
say that was criminal, and that actually bolsters our sense of morality and bolsters the case for Palestinian rights to separate our just cause, to separate our right to freedom, liberation, independence from violent acts that do not truly represent the best interests of our community. The other thing too is that, and this is where things get a little bit difficult, is Realign for Palestine. I have found across, I mean, now what, over a year and a half,
mhm,
there are incredible allies on the, and I hate to use the language of sidisms, but the other side. And I'm not just talking about leftists or anti Zionist Jewish brothers and sisters or Israeli brothers and sisters. I'm talking about even those for whom Israel means something. I mean, to cast the entirety of Israeli society as all being like Netanyahu, all being this, all being baby
Yeah,
killers, all being
right.
that is not correct.
No,
And
because it
so
would be to cast the entirety of the United States in the image of Donald Trump, and we know that that isn't correct either, right? So I do think that it is important because what it is that you are talking about and you are fighting for is what I will simply say is nuance, right?
precisely,
Not every situation is black and white, right?
precisely,
But
precisely.
we all can understand, and I think what we're missing in this moment is the rallying around universal truths, right? That the starving and the maiming of children, men and women is wrong, right?
Without a
That
doubt.
should be a universal truth regardless of whose women and children we're talking about. It is wrong. You have rules for engagement and rules for quote unquote war for a reason, right? To minimize the suffering. And when you're seeing firsthand a country that is not at all interested in the minimizing of suffering, but in the exploitation thereof, you have to call that out.
Without a doubt. I mean, when you have Israeli ministers openly calling about bombing humanitarian areas, openly talking about pushing for, at first they were like, let's do a great transfer and get rid of all the people in Gaza.
Mhm.
And then I think their lawyers had a talk with them and said, hey, you can't actually say that publicly. And then now they're like, oh, we'll do voluntary migration. But Danielle, I think what I go back to, and what, again, I'm not claiming to speak on behalf of all
Mhm.
Palestinians,
Mhm.
but the sentiments that I share are widely held by people on the ground in Gaza who are desperate to kind of inject their voice into the pro Palestine discourse in the diaspora. And there really are two threads. There are those in the Gaza Strip, Palestinians in Gaza, I'm not talking about the West Bank, I'm not talking about in the Arab world or here, who believe that within the imbalance of power dynamics between Israel and the Palestinian people, with Israel clearly holding an overwhelming majority, sorry, an over, I'm going to restate this.
Mhm.
Within the imbalance of power dynamics that exists between Israel and the Palestinians, with Israel being clearly the superior party politically, economically, militarily, and otherwise, there exists plenty of space for Palestinian agency, accountability, and responsibility.
Yep.
And that is
Yep.
not a form of blaming the victim. That is not a form of self loathing. Matter of fact, that is the first step to empowering the
Mhm.
Palestinian people to say, we have some ability to influence our discourse. So how do you translate that from theory to action, to practicality? As the weaker party, as the party that does not have allies, that does not have an air force, that does not have tanks, that doesn't have
Come
nukes, that
on.
doesn't have,
Yep.
you have a responsibility to act with due regard for our people who have faced decades of attempts to get us, to push us away, quite frankly,
Mhm. Mhm.
by
Mhm.
some some, not the entirety of Israel, because there was once upon a time a very robust pro-peace movement within Israel that I think was squandered away. That's a separate discussion. You have the responsibility to, as the weaker party, to act with due regard for the well-being of your people, especially when you're dealing with somebody like a Netanyahu, a Smotrich, and Ben Gvir, and the far right, outright fascists. And that's not hyperbole to call them fascists. Israelis themselves call them fascists.
Yes.
What does that even mean? Further, stop the war, come out and say, you know what? We're going to give all the hostages to Qatar, hand them over to Mr. Trump, and let's get them all on Mr. Trump's new shiny jet and send them back to the United States, and we're done. We're done with this war. We want the Arabs to come in. We want the Palestinian Authority to come in. We'll agree to a transitional phase. We are going to take away any excuse for the current Israeli government to continue its actions that are killing and slaughtering tens of children and hundreds of Palestinians on a daily basis, hourly basis sometimes. We're going to stop that because we recognize that for a year and a half we counted on Biden and the Democrats, that didn't work. We counted on the Arabs, that didn't work. We counted on our own resistance and our own tunnels that didn't work. Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis, the so-called axis of resistance, armed resistance, that all failed. And who's paying the price?
Mhm.
My 12-year-old niece, my uncle Riyadh, my dad's youngest brother, my mom's entire family and her building was wiped out. The entire family, one airstrike, got 31 killed. Okay, so like, my uncle Abdullah, my aunt Zainab, like that to me and to many people on the ground in Gaza for whom we're not just talking, oh, I lost relatives. It's like, no, these are the people I grew up with. This is my home. And by the way, I grew up in Gaza. I came here as a teenager by myself, and I couldn't go back in part because of Hamas's actions. So that's where the frustration is there's an inability by a lot of the advocacy community to hear when tens of thousands of Palestinians were protesting against Hamas and saying, "For God's sake, stop this war! Like, stop getting us killed." Not a single, not a
Mhm.
single voice in the Western world was speaking out in support of these people. So that's what Realign for Palestine is, an attempt to promote radical pragmatism, space for nuance and multiple truths, not to appease anyone, but in pursuit of Palestinian self interest, in pursuit of Palestinian just and urgent aspirations, the rejection of violence as not just being immoral, but being highly ineffective and being a bait that is used to decimate the Palestinian people. And finally, the recognition that no matter how problematic the elements of the state of Israel is, whether contemporary or historic, 7 million Jewish Israelis are here to stay, just like 7 million Palestinians are here to stay. We've got to work this out. Peace is not just some kumbaya concept. Peace is a courageous evolution that is necessary to stop this carnage
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
repeating itself. That's what the essence of Realign for Palestine. And may I please just comment briefly one last time on the point of college activism and the pro-Palestine community in the Western world. I think there's a misunderstanding of my position because I both believe in the necessity of robust pro-Palestine movement, activism, and advocacy movement that can, like I said, harness support for the just and urgent Palestinian cause. Yet I have been immensely critical of what I felt were acts of outright sabotage by
Mm.
underinformed, ill-informed activists who don't have skin in the game, who are taking up space, who are talking over Palestinians, and who are, quite frankly, proving the propaganda right by saying we support Hamas, we support the armed resistance narrative. And this is not just a type like an abomination here and there. There are some who believe that Hamas is right, that Hamas has a just cause. And to me, that then enables
Right.
anti-Palestinians to
Yeah.
say, oh, this is anti-Semitism, this is pro-Hamas, shut it all down.
Shut down the conversation, because I think where we are is a consistent space of talking past one another, and there being people who are wildly misinformed, right? That take up a considerable amount of space at a time when those like yourself who experience on the ground, who experience firsthand what is happening and offer perspective and offer ideas and concepts of how we move forward. That to me is what needs to be front and center and move away from theories and into space of like actual direct radical action. So Ahmed, we will have to leave it there today, but I couldn't thank you enough for making the time for As the World Churns, but more importantly, for the work that you're doing. And please just very quickly tell people if they're interested in learning more about Realign for Palestine, where they can find that information.
Well, there's realignforpalestine.org, and that we have socials on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and I also have my own socials for some spicy commentary. As you saw, I do not shy away from people call me the in Arabic. There's a word called musharib because some people think that I am somehow this pro-Israel troll, and then some people think that I am, secretly under pro-Hamas, but pretending to be a peace activist. There's no nuance, there's no winning on the internet, but Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib and realignforpalestine.org. You can find it all there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.